Hi, YouTubers, everyone, friends, welcome to another edition of Sunday Conversations. I am Erica Robinson. As you know, I am here on this channel in the company of cards, where I use Lenormand to sort of opine and do predictions on things political and cultural. But on Sundays, I do something different. On Sundays, I like to bring a guest on for my audience to get to know and just for us to have a conversation, which I hope you enjoy eavesdropping on. I will leave links if you'd like to contact my guests. And today we have someone here who was kind enough to have me on his podcast when my deck came out, and I was really grateful. And so I've asked John Hyatt to be our guest today. And I'm just going to read his bio. So if my eyes are, on the screen, a little screen, that's why. Uh, John's an inclusive practitioner of Germanic paganism. He's been working with the Germanic and Norse pantheon since 2006, which also introduced him to the multifaceted system of the Elder Futhark runes, which will be our topic for today. In 2016, he started Gifts of the Weird, WYRD, I think that's so cool, podcast to talk about inclusive heathenry and interview authors and creators about interesting topics of divination, magic, music, and earth-based spirituality. He also created the Christmas Oracle, which is beautiful, by the way, and he lives where I live, which is San Diego. So welcome, John, to the show.
Hi, Erica. Thank you. This is awesome. I'm really thrilled to be here with you. This is
Well,
great.
it's great. I'm really happy that you came on, and I know my viewers are going to say, "Oh, a man," because so far all my guests have been women. But again, the year will be long, and I will have many people on, and so welcome as the first male of the year.
Thank you.
So I have a question that is just burning in my throat, which has to do with um, inclusive heathenry. Can you explain first off what heathenry is in the first place?
Oh, I'd be thrilled to. Yeah, heathenry is a practice that is pagan. It's under the pagan umbrella, so it's non-Christian, and it basically is the practices that involve the pantheons of the Northern European lands, from Germany, Iceland, Norway, Sweden, that area. So that would include what people are probably more familiar with is Odin, Thor,
Or Loki?
Freya, Loki, Frigg. So that's pantheon, and it's the spiritual practices that have we're looking into, and we're bringing that energy into modern times. And a lot of people are probably will mostly associate it with the Viking era. But it's way beyond that. It was before the Viking era, and it was after the Viking era for a while until Christianity became the dominant and more popular practices in Europe.
Okay, so we're talking Northern Europe, and we're talking pre-Viking, post-Viking,
And Viking.
all
Yeah,
of it. Okay,
all
all
of
of
it.
the
Yeah,
above.
yeah.
So I just so my audience understands, you all know that I do Lenormand, and the reason I decided to start a channel was that for me, Lenormand is such a friendly, warm, and direct oracle that I knew nobody in the States really knew about very
Mhm.
much. It's very well known around other parts of the world, but less so in the United States until now, of course. And so I'm delighted that so many of you are enjoying it and getting cards and learning the system. And so I thought, well, let me bring an expert, a master of another system. And so John is a master of runes, Runes. And so I was saying to John before we came on that I have my own sort of hierarchy of how I think about these systems. So I think that if we go from, I don't know, I'm going to say friendliest,
Good.
um, most comfortable, um, gentlest, perhaps in some ways most vague, and open to interpretation. I would say oracle cards are a lot of people's gateway drug to divination. And I think that's fine. I think that's great.
Hmm.
I think that the next step up, believe it or not, I'm going to say is tarot. Even though it's 78 cards, even though there's a lot of all kinds of imagery on a card, and color and astrology and religion and everything in there, I still think it is second tier. I mean, second up from oracle cards. Then we have Lenormand, which is friendly, I think, direct, kind, and will tell you the same thing. If you need to hear the same thing 10 times, it will tell you the same thing 10 times in 10 different ways until you get it, which is part of what I love about it. Then you have the Béline, which is a French oracle, and the Béline employs astrology. There's color significance there as well. And now, when you do Béline, you really have to sit up straight because they don't play. But if you really want a punch in the head, if you really want an answer that is unequivocal and direct and impossible to ignore or avoid, in my experience, runes are the way to go. And I know that we live in very, very troubling times for those people who watch my channel anyway. I'm sure for some people they're doing a dance, but the rest of us are not thrilled.
Hmm.
And I do think there is always a time for ease and comfort and hope and uh, and help in a way that is gentle and kind. Um, but I also think that there is no time better built than this for the exploration of something like runes. For those of you who think, oh, I could never do tarot, or it took me forever to do tarot, and that's 78 cards, I hear you. I get it. John
Hmm.
and I, we both get that. We understand. Lenormand, of course, has 36. Uh, Runes, though, happy to say, that the ones we're going to talk about, they're only 24. I mean, you learned the 26 letter alphabet. That's two more than you would have to learn with runes. So, runes, as I understand it, is both an alphabet and a
Hmm.
symbolic language. So, can you explain what really we're talking about here?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. Yes, and I think that's probably a pretty accurate layout of the different platforms of divination or the different types with the cards. Runes are very direct. You can, I mean, it doesn't mean that there's no joy in there. There's a lot of positive runes as well, but and I have a theory about why they seem to be that direct. If you're interested.
I would love to hear it.
I think it's because when you look at and and when you hear people who have interacted with Germanic people and Scandinavian people, they're very direct. They're very no nonsense and kind of I'm not Dutch people for one thing. I'm Dutch, so this is very and there's a lot of talks about it. We all know this is about us. Is that um, you know. When people are talking about and I was listening to a podcast with some Dutch people, and they were like, "Oh yeah, like people who are not Dutch, when you are asked something like, 'Oh, do you like this dish?' Even if someone, say from North America, doesn't like it, they'll say, 'Oh yeah, it's fine, it's great, I love it.' A Dutch person would say, no, I don't like that."
Right, right. They tell
Even
the
if
truth.
you prepared all day for that, they might say, I don't really like that. And I think it's also because in the north, especially the further north you get, the harsher the climbs become, and the smaller period of time when you have that warmth and that growing season and stuff. Most of the, especially as you get up into Iceland, Greenland, Norway, that I mean, they're like many months without uh, warm weather and many hours without light, and so it's a little bit harsher. So I think the runes reflect that,
Mm-hmm.
and
Hmm.
that it's like we're just going to get right to the point. This is what you need to know, and and I think that that's why uh, that just kind of reflects with that. And I've seen some people try to soften them and
Hmm.
say, oh, Hagalas, which is hailstorm, the coming impending change or doom. Oh,
Hmm.
it means, and they try to soften that blow. Well, sometimes you need to know when that storm is coming. As you've been showing with your Lenormand readings about the political climate, I mean, I really liked how you were like, yeah, I think this is not going to go the way we think it's going to go,
Yeah.
and that's how runes are. And runes did start out as an alphabet. We're not exactly sure when the full complete rune row is, and the Elder Futhark is the older Futhark, and it's the oldest of, and there's several Futharks, or several types of runes. The Elder is the oldest. The first inscriptions that we have that have runic or symbols that look like the runes as we know them today, at least 24, is about 150 a common era, and it was found on a comb, and it basically was somebody's name. And then as we go a little further along, there's not a lot of representation. We don't have like volumes of books or inscriptions and all a lot of those things. Unlike Egyptian or Phoenician and Greek, so there's not a lot of that. So it's bits and pieces that are found in graves or uncovered in a rock.
What about the Icelandic Edda? Does that have runes in it?
Well, so we don't know. Well, yeah, the runes are mentioned in the Eddas
Mhm.
as part of the stories, but as far as the symbols, we don't have any original transcripts. Most of those were stories that were orally communicated.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
And then in the 13th century, Snorri Sturluson, he collected those oral um, stories and wrote them down.
Okay.
And so that's how those came about. And then those manuscripts were copied. And then I think in the 1700s, there was a fire that destroyed them. So we don't even have those copies. So um, yeah, so but the runes are mentioned in those Eddas, and they're mentioned for use in magical purposes.
Mhm.
So that's how we kind of can connect with the runes and some of their uses.
So, okay, so on the one hand, and I like this about runes, they can give very practical advice,
Hmm.
but they are also a means to connect with the divine. Is that correct?
I, um, I believe so, yes, because several of the energies, well, several of the runes are directly connected to the gods and goddesses, such as Sowilo, which is the sun, which connects to Sol, the goddess of the sun, who carries the sun across the sky in a chariot.
Hmm. Hmm.
We have Berkana, which is really associated with the goddess Frigg. uh, Ingwaz is connected to the god Frey, and both of those are about fertility and growth from a feminine perspective and as well as a masculine perspective. Thurisaz, it's not directly related to Thor, but we associate it with Thor because of the associations that go with the meaning of Thurisaz that we bring with it. So we think, oh, that's Thor. Yeah, definitely, that's that energy. So it does connect to certain god and goddess energies that we can connect with and be inspired by.
So, so is there any sense, I mean, because this is a very different tradition we're talking, is there any sense of like a higher self? I mean, so for example, when I read Lenormand, I'm not specifically tapping into a specific god or goddess energy, but I think that there is a part of each of us that is God, the
Hmm.
higher self. So when I tap in, what I always say is I'm going to the land of this is Greek, of course, Kairos, to bring down the information into the land of Chronos. Is there any kind of concept like that? I mean, you would say, I mean, you would probably say from Olympus, or wherever, uh,
Yeah.
back down to Earth. Like, how is this connection understood when you read runes?
Oh, great question. Yes, I believe that there really is. Now, of course, as with La Normande or Tarot, there's always going to be differing opinions.
Right.
But I think a prevalent opinion is that the runes tap into the source of what we call the web of weird,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
WIRD, the web of weird, which is guided by the Norns, the three goddesses that weave and determine fate and look at fate and kind of guide us through that. So it's and weird is the web of weird is really kind of the universal energy or the universal concept. And so yes, there is that
There's a
element.
total connection there
Yes,
that makes a lot of
totally. It
sense. Yeah.
totally comes from that. And we even have in the Eddic story when Odin was hanging on the world tree on his journey, his some people associate with a shamanic style journey or a meditative journey, and but 9 days and 9 nights. When he and he when he reached out to the wells that feed what we think is Yggdrasil, was the tree that he was hanging on. He reached out and pulled the runes out. And the well of weird is the web of weird that it connects to. So yeah, the runes reveal themselves through there, and that's how a lot of folks um, associate and tap into that energy of the web of weird. And that's how I do it. I mean, I totally believe that I'm going into the web of weird, and these are universal principles that are connecting worldwide and tapping into energies worldwide and across all types of cultures and practices, and it just all connects in that way.
Have runes, in terms of the way they're used in a modern sense, have they suffered the same fate that I saw the Lenormand suffer, which was, again, Lenormand, of course, is a Germanic French oracle.
Mhm.
And Europeans, of course, understood very well how to use it to find things, for example, that are lost, or to determine the weather. So if you're going to have a party outside, is the weather going to be good? Very sort of concrete questions that we all have. What I don't think that they understood was that it can be used in the way that you've described runes, where you can, which is the way that I try to use Lenormand, where you do tap into that other knowing place. So for with Lenormand, I think part of the reason that my work's become popular is people are saying, "Oh, wait, Lenormand can do these big questions as well." So I'm asking you about runes. Do people have they sort of dumbed it down to be only practical, or do they understand that these instruments can answer some of the biggest questions of life that we have?
I think yes. I think a lot of people have. Now, whether a lot of people use the runes to find a lost key, I've used Lenormand to do that, and it worked.
And it works. That's right.
I was like, oh, there it is. And I looked there 5 times before, and sure enough, there it was. Um, and I don't know how widespread people do that with runes, probably because it's not talked about a lot for that sort of a practical application, but it does get used for the normal questions that we have in life. What's my health going to be like? What's my job going to be like? My finances? Will I find love? Or is this person right for me? Or am I right for that person? Those types of things that are kind of in everyday life, as well as the broader things that weigh on our mind. I'm sure runes were used a lot prior to the election to try to gauge and see what's going, how might this go forward, much like other divination tools were used. And now people are furiously saying, how am I going to manage this time and help me get through this? So yeah, I
Now,
don't know.
so we talk about throwing cards, right? And I think the term for runes is casting. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Runes are cast. And so what are the mechanics? I mean, I have a set of runes here. They're amethyst, so I have the symbol on the actual rune.
Hmm.
It's a symbol there.
That's
Um,
Gavo.
yes. So now, I think it would be good maybe to go through the symbols, but also just in a practical way. to tell, I mean, I know, for example, in Lenormand, we have a 3 card spread, we have a 5 card spread, a 7 card. To tell people, what do you do? So like shake the bag up and then pull out a rune, or are runes read in multiples, or how is it read?
Sure. Well, just a little bit of history is we really don't know for sure that the Elder Futhark runes in ancient times were used for divination purposes. There's no real stories about that or recordings. We have no idea. However, there is a story that Tacitus wrote about the Germanic peoples where they were casting, where either a priest of the community or the father of the family would cast lots,
Lots,
and
yes.
they were so, and all that they said was it had an inscription on them. Now, a lot of moderns people will say, "Oh, those were runes." Well, you can't say they were runes because Tacitus doesn't say they were runes, and we don't even know if they had the full Futhark at that point, because the first time we have what we know is the 24 letters and what order they're in came in about the 6th century, and we have found stones where they've been scribed in order, and we
Hmm.
have consistent stones and representations that show that same order.
Hmm.
So that's how we know that, or that's what, why we say this is their 24 order.
Hmm.
So that story from Tacitus, the way that the Germanics cast lots was they would have um, slips of wood uh,
Hmm.
that were had an inscription on them, and they would take them out of a bag and drop them onto a white cloth, and then they would tell the story based on that. And so from that, that's how we have incorporated that practice into rune work, because we have a history or a point of contact where it says this is how Germanics practiced a form of divination.
A
And
form,
so,
right?
yeah, so we are taking these lots, these runes, and we're using that as a method. Now, a lot of modern tarot practices have also been incorporated where it's, oh, I'll do a one rune pull.
Hmm.
I'll do the 3 rune layout, or one of my popular ones when I do readings is to do what I call my Norn spread, which is a 9, a 3 by 3. It's 9 runes, and then I just read them around and tell the story there.
So
Um,
that way, that makes me think, okay, so you have some sort of order. When, with the casting implies kind of throwing, meaning
it
that
is
like
absolutely.
they land where they land. Like if you think about charm casting and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So how if you're throwing them, I mean, how do you know what, I mean, they're going to land wherever they land.
That's
And
right. Yeah. So,
is there a significance to any kind of pattern that they might land in?
Absolutely, there are. And a lot of people, they'll have a big room cloth, and sometimes they'll mark out quarters or they'll have circles. They'll assign meanings to those circles or
Okay.
those sections. And then when certain runes fall into those sections, they could be a variety of things. So it's up to the reader uh,
Hmm.
when they're doing that. It might be past, present, future. It might be today, tomorrow, next
Okay.
week, that kind of
Good.
stuff when you assign. But when you're doing that, yes, you would take like a handful of runes or all of your runes or a certain number of the runes. Now, you can't do this when we have rune cards. It's a little harder, but I suppose you could pay like 52 pickup.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah, I do.
And you definitely, I would not recommend this with your amethyst runes because you don't want them to be chipping and
Right.
or glass or any other kinds of things. So be, keep in mind the material your runes are made of when you're casting them. But yeah, you would take them and either drop them from a height and they would just kind of fall where they fall. If you're on a cloth, a lot of times people will say, well, anything that falls off the cloth is definitely out of the picture.
Hmm.
When you have runes, basically flat runes work best, like this,
Hmm.
uh, so that they'll either land upside down or right side or symbol side up. A lot of times when the runes fall upside down, those are also kind of out of play, but maybe you want to consider them, but they're also not the message right away. And then you look at groupings. If you have 4 or 5 runes kind of grouped together, look at how they interact with one another based on the question you have. They may have some guidance or some information. a rune that is turned upside that's kind of on a distance away, that's something to pay attention to. Some people would say, well, what direction is the symbol going? Does that mean it's going outward, meaning that's going away from you, or is it pointing inward, coming into you? And those are just all methods that the rune reader themselves works out and and gives their assignments to when they're reading the runes. But yeah, grouping them together, are they laying on top of each other? Does that it's directly impacting one another? Things like that. How close to the center? Because that's a lot of times people say the center of the reading area, that's me. So how close is it to
Mhm,
the
mhm.
querent, and how far away is it from the querent? And that's with just a blank cloth. But when you have the sectionalized, then what the person gives to those sections, the meanings that is interpreted into sort of like the houses of the Lenormand.
Right,
When you look at a card and it's in a certain house, does that emphasize
right.
that meaning? So,
So in terms of the actual symbols themselves, I remember when I first got a set of runes, and I'm like, okay, so these are, I mean, I didn't, I thought, are these to some extent pictographs, kind of? In other
hmm
words, um, like there's one symbol, and I mean, I don't know the names, but where
I'll
it's
tell
a
you.
line and then it's an F because you have the two lines going up, but then
hmm
there's another one where you have the two lines going down from it. And I thought, you know, is one sort of you can remember one because you're receiving and the other because it's you're it's in other words, are but some of them you can't really do that with.
hmm
Like
Yeah.
but is there, I mean, is there any kind of system that you advise or that you know of to be able to learn them? I mean, in some ways, people will be turned off if the answer is no. However, think about learning the alphabet, those 26 letters, right? The C, just because it's a C doesn't mean that it holds anything because it's a cup shape.
hmm
It's a C, so get over it. You
Yeah.
know? So are runes like that, or there are little tricks that you can learn that make it easier to learn what the symbols mean?
There are tricks like that. First of all, the Elder Futhark is not in the alphabetical order that we're used to.
Mhm,
So, so
mhm.
you have to kind of take that away. And I don't recommend putting them into the order because the rune symbols themselves connect to phonetic sounds. That's one of the
Ah,
beauties of the Elder Futhark is it's a phonetic alphabet. And we call it an alphabet. I'm calling it an alphabet for ease
right.
and familiarity, but it would actually be called Futhark, which is like Alpha Beta tells us what alphabet is. Futhark is the first six runes spelled out, and that's
Oh,
why it's
who
called the
knew? I never
Futhark.
knew that. Well,
Yeah,
that makes it so much easier. You can learn
you
the
can
six
learn the
first
six
ones
first ones, and
right
and
away.
and so they're connected to phonetics. And when you look at and the way that we have these meanings associations with the runes today is because of rune poems that were recorded. So I'm going to interject right here that we have several different types of rune systems. The Elder Futhark is the older, and that's the most popular one. There's another one called the Anglo-Saxon runes, which developed out of Frisia, which is northern Netherlands now, and what is now the British island, England. And basically, it's the 24 Elder Futhark, but then they added uh, five more runes at one period of time, and then they added another four. So we have an Anglo-Saxon of 29, and then eventually 33. Then,
Mhm.
as you moved further north, the Icelandics and the Norwegians, they said, well, that doesn't work as well for our phonetics. We're going to simplify it, and they halved it to 16. So,
Ah,
so they're different. But we have three extant rune poems that talk about meanings, and some people think it was like a the alphabet song or the alphabet poem that we have. A is for apple, B is for bat, C is for cat. That thing, because they talk about how Fehu is money, wealth, fee. Ansus is communication, which is the second rune. So Fehu is the one that went up, the two that
mhm.
went up, and kind of looks like an F. So that's helpful. F
Yes,
Fehu, F, F.
right.
Ansus, the one that is the one that goes down. Now that could also be helpful because it's ah, it's the symbol, the sound for ah, but it goes down, so it kind of looks like an A. So you
Hmm.
have a little help there.
Hmm.
Some of the others,
And what does that one mean?
Ansus is communication, and it's usually connected with divine communication,
Exactly.
connected to Odin.
Exactly.
Yes,
That's what so when I thought of that one, I thought, okay, so here we have those two lines going down from the top. So
yes,
communication from here down to
yeah,
here, down to us.
definitely. So
Yeah.
so there's great ways you can do that. Some, like you said, are just not.
Oh, yeah.
Uh, and some are depending on which how you interpret them. So there's a lot of ways to do it. The One of the ways that I encourage people to study the runes is also to, I call it intoning. Some people will call it galdering, but it's where you might chant the sound of the rune while you're embodying the message of it and the symbol of it. So like Fehu, you might go Fehu. Now you're getting sound and you're feeling it in your sound. You're thinking about what it means. You have the sound of the of it. So it kind of all incorporates it in as a great way to learn the runes themselves. And it just takes, like any divination system is going to take a little work. You just have to apply apply to it. It doesn't automatically download, like I would like Lenormand and Tarot to do to my brain. So I'm just
Yeah.
working
Well, but
it. That's
nothing
right.
automatically
Yeah.
downloads. Who was it? Malcolm Gladwell who said, you can become a master at something if you put in 10,000 hours of practice. I
Hmm.
mean, that might be, an exaggeration in terms of the number of hours, but the point is, nothing comes, nothing worth doing is going to come like that, and it
Yeah.
takes practice. So I had two other questions that
Hmm.
um, and you can answer them in any way you want. One is that you mentioned the fact that you showed the wooden runes. And I know that one of the things that people who are into runes like to do is to create their own um,
Hmm.
out of wood and then burn the symbol on there. The idea being you're taking a natural material
Hmm.
and essentially creating something sacred
Yes.
that by putting your energy and your effort and your craftsmanship into. So I think that's very cool. But you mentioned cards. So can you talk about the different physical forms that these things can take?
Absolutely, yeah. Definitely, there's that method, and the ones I'm showing you, I did. It's a special set for me because it's cut from a branch of a tree that was growing in my mother's yard in Utah. It's from a quaking aspen, so that connection, she's passed now, so it has a really even more connection to where I grew up, to my mother,
Hmm.
to the land spirits of that area. So that helps create that even more connection to creating runes. Uh, there are different ideologies about the materials of runes, much like tarot. Many people have heard, like, oh, you have to have a tarot deck gifted to you,
Right.
or it's not
Or
going to
they
work for
keep
you.
it in a silk cloth or
Yes,
yeah,
those,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, those things. Well, there's people that do that about runes too. It's like, oh, unless you make runes the way that Tacitus said that they made those lots from a certain type of tree growing on a certain side of the tree, um, slipped, and then there's a poem where it talks about blooding the runes, so people think they have to put their own blood on them. If you do, don't give them to me. I don't want to touch
Oh,
them.
yeah. Biohazard.
Yes. So there's that method, and I think that's a fine method if someone wants to do that. It does connect your energy really closely to them. I did not blood my runes. I don't want to do that, but I did, and it does help you learn the runes too, because
Sure.
now you can focus while you're creating and
On the
crafting.
single one and really learn it.
Yeah. And if the wood has a special meaning to you, that's also powerful as well. But in addition, there are other ways that runes. You have a set of stones
Right.
that are carved and engraved out, but not everyone has that craft or that want the desire to do that. So for me and for a lot of people, yes, buy runes, have someone else make them for you or whatever. That's totally fine. But there's also wonderful cards that are created. And yeah, cards is a very modern interpretation. It comes from working with tarot and oracle stuff. So, but it's also a great way is for folks who don't want those types of materials. You just have these beautiful cards that have the image of how it connects to the rune meaning, kind of help you learn the runes as well. And there's a lot of great ways. That was the green glyphs or rune cards. This is the Norse goddess. I had these folks, these ladies, created based on the goddesses and connected the rune energies to the goddesses of the Northern Pantheon. So it's a wonderful deck,
Well, and
and
they've got the names on there on the top.
they have the names and what the symbol is on the top. So
Yeah.
that's also a great way to help. There's also rune dice. Some people like to use dice, and so you can use rune.
Those I like those.
Yeah, these are really cool. You can also use the six-sided square die, but yeah, these are really great. Those are clay. People who've used clay, glass, ceramic.
Mhm.
So, uh, but there are some that are definitely like, no, you definitely, unless it's cut by wood on this certain method, the runes won't work for you, and they're
But
very adamant about
we
that.
will always have the purists among,
Yes,
right?
definitely. But yeah, there's so many ways to engage and incorporate in runes that I think a variety of ways is great. I mean, I have this wonderful deck called the Modern Rune Oracle, and it's totally images taken of. Uh,
Oh, wow.
yeah, it's beautiful, wonderful deck. Uh, not necessarily for beginners because it's kind of a little bit hard to figure out what the meaning is by the picture.
Right.
You're not familiar with working with runes already, but it's still a wonderful, beautiful, inclusive deck. I love that they incorporated such a diverse um, take for
Mhm.
because we're modern and this is what
That's
this is
right.
about. So yeah, so there's a lot of uh,
Well, and if it's a
ways.
language, language does morph. I mean, people don't
Hmm.
speak Latin unless they're in church, whatever, for a reason. Latin has morphed into all of the Romance languages because languages are living, breathing things.
Yes.
And that's what keeps them alive, right?
Yep.
So as with Lenormand and runes, I had a question that was related to, oh, okay. So uh, so when I first started reading tarot, I would hear people say things like, "Oh yeah, that's not a don't ask tarot that question. Tarot doesn't like that question." Well, okay,
Mm.
first of all, um, last time I checked, I'm the human, and that's the card, and it doesn't like it. What do you mean it doesn't like it? So, I mean, I can understand people saying that the phrasing of a question can be problematic for a particular oracle to answer the question. A lot of times I'll get clients and they'll ask a question like for it is just a basic example will be, should I blah blah blah? And I always say, you're the one with the agency and the aegis. And so you don't want to say should. You might want to say, what would happen if I did X, Y, Z?
Mhm.
So I guess one of my questions is, are there questions that runes are particularly good at answering or that they prefer, if you want to anthropomorphize them, that they prefer? Are there questions that you shouldn't ask? What are the parameters of that?
I agree with you in the way that phrasing the question is important. I have not encountered that the runes say no, like, oh, I'm not going to answer that question, like you said.
Yeah, come on.
Or that I think you can ask the runes anything, much like you can any other divination tool. But the phrasing is what's important so
Right.
that you can narrow down what the response is so that it can actually apply and you can actually do
Exactly.
something with it, right?
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
if someone comes in and says, "Oh, I want to know this, or this," and you've got four things in there, I always say pick one
Mhm.
because if you leave it like that, the answers are going to come up. You're not going to know to what scenario that
Right.
belongs.
Right. The energy's too diffuse.
It's
Right.
too
I mean,
diffuse,
what
right?
I might do is in a case like that is I say, okay, I'll draw three cards for each of those options.
Or yeah,
But
absolutely.
that
Yeah.
means I'm only looking at those three cards for that particular option.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Definitely, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So I think it, and because looking at the way Germanic or the way the runes are with the Germanic and Icelandic peoples is, they're direct. They don't want to know, like, just ask me what you want to know. Don't beat around the bush,
right,
basically.
right.
I think that sometimes frustrates my husband. I'm like, just what are you asking me? Just narrow it down. And people
Well, I
too.
think
I
that
get frustrated.
that's
I get
the
fr
beauty of Lenormand and runes and Berlin is that they are very direct. Sometimes with a tarot reading, you're like, is it me? Or is this like above my head? It's the
Yeah,
answers
yeah,
floating up here.
yeah.
Speaking of, okay, so my name is Erica with a K. My maiden name is Hageman, Hageman. You cannot get more German than that. You know, my father's
Hmm.
background on his father's side was Germanic. So, and this is, of course, a Germanic oracle. I wanted to, I like to talk about hard things in ways that people can hear, right?
Hmm.
Otherwise, so one of the things that I know is that um, runes have been um, appropriated, co-opted, bastardized. I mean, I could come up with a lot of different verbs. Um, and so, for example, I'm black, right? So I'll give a sort of a cultural example would be the word woke. Woke is a good thing. Why? Because if you're woke, you're not asleep.
Hmm.
However, the word's been co-opted. So now, oh, you're woke, like it's a bad thing.
Hmm.
And so, human beings are human beings and they are going to appropriate and co-opt, etc. And unfortunately, there's been some of that with runes, which is part of why I wanted to have you on because I know them separate and apart from that co-option. And I just would like you to talk a little bit about that and where that originated and how you can steer clear of, for example, let's say you want to study runes.
Hmm.
Um, what should you look for? What should you steer clear of so that you don't go to that Nazi-ish place?
Thank you. Yes, definitely. It's definitely something that needs to be conversations that need to be held in runic studies, because yeah, there is that element that of fascism and white supremacy that are using runes today to promote their bigoted uh, stuff. And so runes are ancient. So they came about before white supremacy. They came about before what we consider race today, the whites and black and Asian and all of those things that humans have unfortunately devised to separate and divide us. And but the runes were a alphabet, a form of writing language uh, since the early part of the Common Era, and they were in societies that didn't use them for those reasons. There was a lot of if as we study the history of the Viking era people and the Germanic people, they were inclusive to the point where once you were part of the society, you were part of the society, and they interacted with a lot of different cultures. I mean, we've got Vikings dealing with the Arab nations down in the Mediterranean and all of that. So they were the northern people are interested in trade and working out with each other and improving their society. So in the 1800s, so how it kind of got connected with runes, it was in the late 1900s actually, 1800s, 1900s. There was a surge in nationalism, Germanic nationalism, and so that kind of sparked an interest in, oh, let's pull things that are unique to our culture. Runes was one of them. So they kind of got caught up in that. Then the 20th century came in, and you got this um, nasty little man named Hitler who started a movement of denying rights and scapegoating problems onto a certain group of people. Sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it?
A little bit.
And part of that rise and those raids for trying to round up people and put them in camps and separate them and deport them and whatever was tapping into that nationalism, and the runes were swept up as a part of that. And so certain symbologies, certain runes were used as symbols of that regime and that dictatorship, unfortunately. And among them was a certain ancient symbol. It's ancient and sacred in Indian
Yeah.
practices,
Hmm.
as well as Germanic practices, was the sun wheel or
Yeah.
the swastika. There are a lot of heathens that are trying to reclaim that symbol for its use of life and joy and energy. But, it's too tainted and it's still being used for that evil purpose. So I'm of the group of heathens that are like, it can't be reclaimed. Let it go for now. It's too far gone. There's too much pain and too much horror that is still associated with it. A
Hmm.
thousand years from now, maybe.
Yeah.
But there are people marching the streets of America today using symbols like it's called the Odal, but it's based on the Othala. So what makes Othala this? There are these little feet. So don't use these little feet
So
on your
don't use
on
those.
your
Okay.
on your Othala. Othala is this. This is the
Ah,
symbol being used for white supremacy and the Nazi, the Proud Boy kind of folks. So it's called.
if you see little feet, run the other way.
That's right. This is Othala, which means hearth, home, inheritance. This is a good symbol. But
Right.
yeah, so they've co-opted those in that, and there are some heathens that are a part of that. Unfortunately, they're believe that heathenry and runes are to be used only with people of a certain skin color, white, from a certain heritage, Northern Europe, uh, and and I don't believe that, or that you have to be straight and produce children. Beautiful white children is one of the mantras that they used, and that's just not the way
So
the
I feel like the best form of resistance is if you are not straight, if you are not white, learn the runes. I'm
learn
just
the runes. And the runes work for everyone because they're a universal energy. They come from the web of weird, and the runes are not going to care, anthropomorphizing them again.
right,
They work with the people that work with them.
right.
I do encourage folks when you're studying the runes to learn the stories that go with them, to learn how they were used in those days with magic, to connect with the in a way, even if they're not part of your spiritual practice, but to learn the deities that can be connected with them, so you can tap into those energies and learn them, because they are from a cultural area, a heritage area, which is that northern part of Europe. So there's all of that that's going to help really invigorate uh, learning the runes and being a part of them, and uh, you know, um, and to fight back against the misuse of the runes in
You
that.
know, I would love it if you, I have a couple of links for you that I'll put in the show notes, but I'd love it if you could maybe come up with some resources that my viewers might be able to turn to so that they can do their own research and reading if runes are something that they're interested in studying. Could you do that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah,
Good.
there's a couple of really good books out
Good.
about learning the runes themselves, and there's of course, the Poetic Eddas, the Prose and Poetic Eddas, which you can learn the stories that go from that era of time that the runes were active in, and yeah, definitely.
That'd be great. What have I not asked you that my audience should know about runes?
Uh,
I'm sure it's a lot.
you have, well, I think. Uh, I don't know if it's not that you've asked me, but what I would just encourage people is um, to sit with them and learn, and just like I said earlier, get to know the stories that go with them because they're so rich and vibrant. And 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 if you can get if you're like, oh, the symbols are just learning the symbols is going to be hard, well then get a deck that has a photo associated with it or an image, so that that's kind of a starting point, right?
Mhm.
Uh, and I also think that the runes are just really a great tool to have in addition to your other. If you're already practicing other things, you can also use the runes to help clarify a reading.
Exactly. I do that in my Substack. I use Adinkra, which is an African oracle, and tarot. Tarot's like the main thing, and then the Lenormand is sort of uh, fleshes it out, and then the Adinkra kind of sums it up. I think it's very important for people to realize that these are all languages, and it's not like the Tower of Babel where nobody understands each other. It's just that if you do it the right way, each language takes its turn to speak. The dialogue can be rich and full and sort of way beyond what you might think if you blended things together. It's just let each talk in their own turn.
Yeah, and we focus mostly on the divination side here, but there's
Yeah.
so many other things that runes can be used for.
Like what?
In your magical practices to help enhance a spell or to put that energy for healing. And we have actual stories talking about those types of things for safety, traveling. I use and they're called bind runes. Many people probably have heard of bind runes, or perhaps not, but those are sigils that are created by combining the runes together to create a design. And there's several ways to design, and I've hold workshops about how to create bind runes. And one of my podcast episodes is about creating a bind rune as well. It's really early, so you have to really go
So
back far.
blind rune is like keeping bad stuff from you. Is that correct?
Oh, no, no, binding means just
Well,
uh,
to
put them together, but it could be used for anything. It could be used for protection to keep stuff away, but it could also be used to help draw
draw
energy
things
in.
in.
It can also be
Oh,
used to help enhance healing and things, because what you're doing is when you're putting the individual runes together, you're combining their energies sort of like a recipe uh,
yes.
to put their energies forward to a specific spell or an intent that you have. That
Mhm.
might be to keep things away or to protect you from things. Like my travel, I have a travel bind rune that I put on an airplane whenever I travel to help keep us safely in the air and
And what do
safely.
you mean? What do you mean you put on an airplane? What do you do? What like literally do you do?
So literally what I do is so you go down the rampway and there's always that wait right before you step
Yep.
onto the plane. So I put my hand on the side of the plane and with my finger I just draw my little bind rune and I say a little prayer or I just ask them, please protect this plane. I involve the nature spirits, the land spirits to release us and accept us safely, the air spirits to carry us through the air safely and then deliver us to the land spirits safely. And I just do all of that with, very subtly. And some people might think I'm just doing a cross like a Catholic would. And when
You
they
know
ask,
what it reminds me of? Because I'm a Reiki master, and
uh-huh.
the Reiki, there are Reiki symbols, and they're
Yes,
pictorially
yes.
represented. But when I do Reiki for someone, I do those hand. There are
Mhm.
you draw it kind of in the air, the
Yeah,
symbol.
definitely.
And I
And
love the idea of what you just said about taking more than one rune and putting them together, sort of to enhance the energy and sort of
yeah,
creating your own unique protection symbol. I think that's amazing. Yeah.
absolutely. Oh, I'm going to step away because I can show you
Okay.
something I did. This is a bind rune that I created for a house blessing, to bring good energies into the house, to bring friendliness into the house, to protect the house.
Uh-huh.
Um, so it was just something like this that can be hung on the outside of the house or on the inside of the house. And this is an example of a style of a bind rune. It's called a radial bind rune because the
Well,
symbol.
what have you put together in this particular symbol?
So Othala is here.
And what is that for?
That represents home and
Okay.
heritage and home life. I've got algae's here, which is for protection. This is Wunyo for joy. Fehu is for prosperity, and I got joy again, prosperity again, and algaes again. So basically, just to
To
create,
mirror it and
to mirror it,
in all
create a
directions.
design, and then around it is just flowers and decoration. Those are just for that. But th this is an example of how a bind rune can be used to create. It can be beautiful. It can be
Yeah.
practical. I wouldn't draw this on the plane. This is what I draw on the plane. It's
Hmm.
Elhaz or algaes and Rido, protection and travel. So very simple. I even put it on my suitcase in tape so that one, I can identify my suitcase, but that my suitcase will get safely to me as well and won't go on a journey that I'm not on.
You know what? Here's the thing, people think of things like, I don't know, security blankets or uh, whatever, but these are ancient. There is an ancient understanding of the power of symbol,
Hmm.
and to sort of keep it alive by using it in these ways. I mean, the power behind that has got to be phenomenal.
It is. And like for the travel that I do on the plane, I learned that from the Eddas because there's a
Oh,
story that says, inscribe a rune on the oars of your ship for safe journey
yeah,
or something
yeah,
like that. So I'm like, well, what's an airplane? It's just a ship in the air now,
yeah.
or I'll
Yeah.
put it on my car or on a bicycle or whatever. So we have examples that we can pull from and say, I'm going to modernize this and still use it today. And so there's way more than just divination. It's not just divination. You can write in it too. For people who like to do spell work, sometimes a symbolic writing is important to their spell work.
Mhm.
Runes are a great way to incorporate that if you want to have a specific writing system for a spell
Mhm.
work, right? And then you can pull that energies in as well.
Well, that's the thing, and I always say, that energy, the language of the universe is vibrational. And so
Yes.
the more ways that you can communicate to the universe the way you'd like things to be, the better, right?
Hmm.
And speak things, we can write things, we can create these symbols or use these ancient symbols in new ways. All of those things move the energy in the direction that we'd like it to go.
They do, yeah. And I just want to say again that the runes are for everyone.
Exactly. Exactly.
Definitely want to say the runes are for
That's
everyone.
what I'm saying. If you want to be proactive, subversive, if you want to be part of the resistance, resistance can take many, many forms. Okay, I'm off Facebook now. That's a form of resistance because I don't want Zuckerberg to get my money. But another form of resistance could be learning this energetic system. This divinatory, and not just as you say, not just divinatory and predictive, but practical. Um,
Mm.
Learn these arts because then you are armed, basically. You're
Yes.
protected, you're surrounded, you're guided, you're held. And so I'm so glad that you came on with me, John, because I wanted people, I thought they'd be interested in just something completely different from Lenormand or from tarot. And there's tons of other stuff out there, whatever your interest is, but runes, they're a tangible, accessible system that I think part of being part of the resistance is to wrest it from the hands of those who mean people ill
Hmm.
and use them for good.
I agree with you. Absolutely. Yeah. It's a great way. And as a member of the LGBTQ community, I'm nervous as well.
Yeah,
And employing these as much as we can to resist and to stand firm and to not let that repeat.
that's right. That's right.
Stuff. But yeah, runes are, and I just find runes fun, even though they're so direct and so pointed. If you don't mind, I had an example. I should have brought this up before, but when you were talking about questions to ask,
Yeah,
and when it comes to responses and how direct they are, I had a querent, and the querent asked if they were stuck on someone who had moved out of their lives, and that person, was um, partnership situation, and the other partner decided that it wasn't for them, and they had moved on. But the querent was stuck on that, and like, and they would come in and they would go to different readers and ask kind of the same questions, like, "Oh, I want to get back with that person. What do I need to do? How do I get them to come back to me?
Hmm.
What do I do?" Well, this querent brought this in, and after this, I said, "I'm not going to take this question anymore. You've asked it too many times." But their question was, is that person thinking of me?
Oh, I've heard that one. Yeah.
So, so I was like, okay. And so I pulled the runes out and I was like, no, that person is not thinking of you. As a matter of fact, that person is with someone else. And the querent was like, what? How dare you say that to me? Kind of like, I felt like that was the thing. Like, and I was like, that's what the runes are saying. The saying is, no, they're not thinking of you. So that's how direct the runes can be.
But
And
that
I'm
could
only,
be very helpful in helping
yes,
the person say, okay, that energy is not, they're not where I am.
yeah,
So
you
maybe
hope
I
that
don't,
that's what they took.
yeah, well, we hope so. Maybe I don't need to stay on this path if it's a
Yes.
dusty, rock-strewn path that nobody's coming towards me on.
Yeah, and and if and I'm not dissing the Oracle, but if someone had pulled up like an angel card, so they may not have been that pointed and not said something so direct, like no,
Right.
you
Right.
know,
And there's all kinds of readers of these systems. And so, sometimes it's like, I don't know what, finding a doctor or finding a therapist. Sometimes you got to kiss some frogs before you find the prince.
oh yeah, yeah,
Um, but yeah, I think someone who is good at reading runes, which you are, and is direct and understands the virtues of directness, can be a real boon to moving people
yeah.
forward in their path.
And when reading for other people, I think that you have to be willing to give that message and not sugarcoat it. Because I think sometimes readers are like, well, I really don't want to say something so direct that might cause the querent to feel bad or not have the answer they want. So I might soften it myself, or
And
interpret
you know
other.
what? That can soften the way you actually see the cards and you read what you want to read into it
Yeah,
as opposed to what's really there. I
what's
mean, I
really there?
get people asking me a lot of times, um, how come so many readers got this X question wrong and you got it right? I said, well, I can't speak to what other readers do, but I do think that we have to separate out as readers our ego from this process. And ego doesn't mean, look at me, I'm so great. Ego meaning the outcome that you would want for your sitter, for your client. I want the best for them.
Yes.
I want to give them happy news. That's ego. If you put the ego, like I say in my book, in the back seat with a juice box and an iPad, and let spirit be your partner in this work, your accuracy will shoot up, but so will your ability to be direct. And I do think, though, as a reader, it's very important to learn how to tell people things they don't want to hear in a way that is kind.
Yeah.
I mean, truth and kindness are not mutually exclusive of each other. And, you know, there's no need for getting off on, for example, the shock and awe that you can invoke in somebody by telling them hard stuff. Like
Yeah.
that's not nice.
And
How
if
to
it and if
deliver
it
a hard.
sounded like I was that way
No, not at all. Not at
with
all.
this querent, I wasn't. I'm
No,
kind of
no,
embellishing it for
not
our story,
no,
but
not you. No, I no, and I
yeah.
experience you as a very kind person. But I
Yeah.
do think that I know I have people in my subscriber base who would love to do this kind of work.
Yeah, no.
And I think it's more than just learning the actual art of your particular modality. It's
Hmm.
also how are you with people?
Definitely. It's seeing the querent. My husband says that it's like he does tarot readings and he's been doing it for 40 years, and it's like he sees that sometimes we're I'm phrasing this, we're not therapists, but people come to us for some of that life guidance.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's about how do you speak to the people about it and say it in a kind way,
Right.
but in a truthful way,
Right.
like you pointed out. And there's times when I've had the runes out, and I've been with the querent, and so I'm telling them what it is, but you know what? It makes no sense to me. I have no idea. I don't know
And
how
it's
to string this together,
right.
but
And
I'm hoping it
that's
makes
for
sense
you
to
to know.
them.
That's right. Well, people will say to me, "Do you want me to explain the situation?" I'm like, "No, if it makes sense to you, I'm good. Then I've done my job."
Absolutely. And it took me a while to get to that point, Erica, because I was like, oh, I have to understand what the message is so
Yeah,
I can
no,
communicate it to the
right.
querent. And for a long time I was frustrated with myself because I'm like, did that go well? Am I a bad reader? Because I would get stuck on some of these things. I'm like, I have no idea what this means. It doesn't make sense to me.
All your job is to deliver the,
Exactly. And it took a while.
the
So folks listening and seeing this, if you feel that way when you're reading for other people, um, know that it's not the message for you, it's for the querent, and to just deliver the
just
message.
deliver because the danger is that you say, "Oh, I'm not going to say that because it sounds crazy or it doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
It sounds weird." I had one
it might
client.
be what they need, right?
Yeah, I had a client years ago, and she wanted to bring her father through, who had passed, and I do mediumship through the cards. And so I said, and I heard this voice, and the words were, "Baby, I got you. I got you. Not I've got you. I got you. I got you." So I said, "Okay, I'm going to say this. And this is not my normal accent. This is not how but this is what I'm hearing." She goes, "That is exactly how he talked.
Oh, wow.
That is exactly what he used to say to me. Baby, I got you. I got you. I got you." Now, I could have said, "Erica, what are you thinking? Get a grip. Don't say that. Where's that coming from?" But instead, I've learned to just say what I see or what I hear or what I smell.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
all
yeah.
information. And the more you work with these tools, whether it's runes, whether it's tarot, whether it's Lenormand, whether it's charms, the more your other senses will become engaged in the process. Again, so long as you've got your ego in the back seat with the juice box and the iPad.
Mhm. Definitely. I've had those experiences too, where something's just floating here. It's just
Mhm.
like, you need to say that. And then I'm like, well, that has nothing to do with what's on the
Doesn't
table.
matter. Say it
You need
anyway.
to say it. And I'm like, okay, I don't know why, but I'm just feeling this needs to be said as well. And the person's like, oh, that makes sense.
Well, the Muslims say if you take one step towards Allah, Allah will take two steps towards you. And this is an example of that. The more you are willing to respond to what you're given, the more you'll be given in terms of how clearly you see the message in front of
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, and don't just focus on the tool because, like you
Right.
said earlier, there's all these other things that come in. And as you get used to reading, those start to become a little bit more clearer and easier to identify and just let it go and put the ego in the back. I love that when I read that in your book. I was like, oh, that's such a great sentiment right there. It's like, yes, put that in the back seat. And I love the example.
Always have it. It's not going anywhere, but for the purposes of this work, physics tells us that two things can't take up the same space at the same time.
Hmm.
Well, spirit can't be your partner if your ego is busy kicking and screaming and wanting to take up that space. So you're just moving it in space
Hmm.
so that, and that spirit has the energy to help you and work with you.
Yeah.
Is there I don't know if this is, and you can tell me if this is not like a thing, but is there anything that you could tell us, that the runes could tell us, for the collective as we leave today? Is there
Sure.
a message for us? I mean, I don't know if that's too nebulous a question or um hmm,
Um, you know, um, I think runes do well with general questions like that as well, because the intent is it's just a general thing. Give me a positive message or something. And I
message
think the,
for all of us to take
yeah,
away
and
from
and I
Sunday.
think the runes are good at that. Because that's clear. I think to the energy that yeah, that's a clear message. Not when we're competing with tell me this, or should I do this, or this. Then the runes are like, uh,
Right. Make
here's
up
what
your
I
mind and then get back to me.
yeah. So, yeah, I'd love to bring out just a general message for the viewership. Um, oops. Okay, so I pulled out three runes. Typically, I like to do a three rune because uh, one, like La Normande, it helps to have clarifiers
Right.
with the message. You can get a very good message from one reading. I mean, a quick, short answer, but I always like to embellish a bit. So the first one I got was Ingwas, which is like a diamond shape. You also see it with feet and like hair antennas, and that's just a different way of that's how the Anglo-Saxons would write it, but this is the Elder Futhark way. It's Ingwas. It's connected with the god Freyr and growth energy. It's the seed of potential. So,
Okay, love that.
so what I'm seeing here is for our, and maybe this is directly related to runes, but or any divination study. Look at the seed of potential within you. What's the growthing? What's the starting point? And then we get Thorisaz, which is the thorn. It's connected to the god Thor. It's as that seed grows, I'm seeing it as saying, use it to surround yourself with protection and also to go outwards with
Mhm.
it. Um, to Thor is a very offensive being because he protects um, the realm from the bad things that happen. So
Well,
he's
that's a good, that message is particularly
yes,
powerful because so many people, I mean, we all do, want to just pull the covers over our head and
yeah.
sleep for 4 years. But
I
no, it's about being protected.
I
So
think it's
we
going
can
on the
go that way.
offensive.
Yeah.
Be proactive on it, and you're really doing a great thing with that with your regular readings and stuff. I mean, I've been enjoying reading them, and I'm like, oh, uh,
Thanks.
and the last one is Awaz, which is it's the horse. It's directly horse. It's connected with also with
Travel.
traveling through the. It's not the Rido travel. Rido is about that too, but this is about traveling through the realms, and it's also about partnerships. So while we're being proactive and offensive and not idle, partner up with
Find
folks.
your people. Yep.
Find your people. Now, Manaz is also about that. It's about community, but this is about, to me, this is really about close partnerships.
Mhm.
Uh, who are you really going to saddle up with? Who's got your back? Who's got you? To pull from that example earlier, but it's also it's probably going to be on a lot of levels of existence that we're going to be needing to do this and affect it. So it's not just um, going to a rally or a protest, but it's also about writing those letters. It's about the energy work that we need to do. Um, Fred, my husband, talks about how in World War II, um, I forget the person's name, Dion.
Dion of it's with an F. Dion.
Yeah,
The cone of protection.
they in England they did all of
Dion
these.
Fortune. Dion
Beyond
Fortune.
Fortune, yeah, they did the spell work to protect England
Hmm.
from the Nazi invasion, and we need to do that as well. So I think it's to look deep within, to pull out what we can, be offensive, partner up, and realize it's more than just one layer. We've got a lot of different things.
It wasn't enough to pull the lever, obviously. We have to do more.
Yeah. How's that?
We have to do more.
Ooh, I'm tingling now. Oh, that just really
That
means a
was a
lot.
great, that's a great message. I think that's great to take from our Sunday, our day of rest, into our Monday, which will mark 1 week, that we need to, saddle up and get ready to throw down.
Yeah, because we've already seen in 1 week what's been
Mhm.
done to dismantle diversity and protection and freedom
Yeah,
in a country that has fought for decades to have freedom for others.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, we will fight on all of these levels, and
we will.
Runes, I hope that many of my viewers will be interested enough to say, let me get a set of runes, or let me make a set of runes, or let me contact John Hyatt and learn more. Uh,
Please do reach out to me. I'm
yeah,
happy to talk about runes. I love runes. I enjoy talking about them. I'm happy to provide some guidance and where to find different materials and things like that. So yeah, it's great.
that's terrific.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm sure my viewers will definitely want to reach out to you because for some of them, this will be their thing, and I think that's great. And
I think it is.
they won't have known that until they watch this broadcast. So thanks so much, John, and enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Thank you. You too, Erica. I've really enjoyed speaking with you. You're wonderful. Thanks. Thanks
Great.
for your work as well. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you all. And I will see you again in the week. Take care. Bye bye.